Hello, everybody. Welcome to Parent Information Night for Jordan Elbridge Athletics. My name is Dan Statmiller. I'm the Director of Health, PE, and Athletics here at Jordan Elbridge High School. My contact information is on the screen right now in front of you. You can follow us on Twitter for updates, and we also send weekly reminds with athletic schedules, news, and updates. If you need to get in contact with me, my phone number is up there, extension 1005, and my email address is dstatmiller@jecsd.org. So again, welcome. We're going to go through some of the main policies and procedures as it regards to the code of conduct for extracurriculars and athletics here at Jordan Elbridge. Your team coaches will be meeting with you to discuss more specific team rules and guidelines within the first 2 weeks of the season. So let's talk about some updates here. Family ID is going to continue to be our mode of registration. You can log on and register your child for a variety of activities. All signups open 30 days prior to the season starting. So all that paperwork is now digital on there. You can upload a physical to Family ID as well. So we have a copy. This is a change from last year, 2 years ago. You could have a physical within the previous 2 to 3 years because of COVID, and that is not the case anymore. You have to have a physical on file within a year. You can check with your building nurse if you're not sure about the date of the last physical. Other things on the Family ID informed consent that participating in sports does possess a risk of contracting COVID. You will sign off on that, and you will also sign off on testing for the athlete, and we will talk a little bit more about testing later. The pink forms you see on that screen here, they've been around for a long time. These are really, really, really important. They're authorization for treatment of a minor in the event that there ever is an emergency. Rarely does it happen, but we have had cases where we've had to transport kids by ambulance to the hospital. If a parent isn't here, this card goes with them. It has your name and information as well as insurance information, and also it allows a qualified medical person to act on your behalf should you not be able to be reached. So that is really important. Those are due back by the second day of practice. If they're not back, the kids will not be allowed to practice. If you remember in previous seasons, we did daily health screenings. We have done away with those. The CDC found those largely ineffective at detecting COVID, and they took a lot of time to fill out and also time to make sure everyone filled them out. So we have done away with that this year, as well as temperature checks. Some policies that are longstanding rules here at Jordan Elbridge, the chain of command policy. If you have an issue with something that's going on, please have the player go to the coach first, then the parent to the coach if it's not resolved. And if it's still not resolved, please contact the athletic director. But a lot of times when I get these calls, the first thing I'm going to say is, have you talked to the coach yet? Has the kid talked to the coach yet? Things that I tell my coaches not to discuss, the coach's strategy and play calling. I know you may disagree with that. You might not always like it, but that is their decision, and I am the one that evaluates that at the end of the season. Playing time is not something they are to discuss. Again, that is their choice, and I will obviously make those evaluations. And we cannot talk about other students. And I know a lot of times the issues may involve other students, but we cannot discuss other students other than your own with you. Some of the basics. So again, most JV and varsity sports are going to be a 6-day-a-week commitment, modified as 5 days. The high school dismisses at 2 o'clock and practices start as early as 2:30. And the middle school dismisses at 2:45 and practices can start at 3 p.m. And again, that is on normal days. On Wednesdays, we do have our shortened day schedule. So we do have sports study hall open. Athletes must go to sports study hall on Wednesdays. And then it is an option for them if their practices are after the school day. They can't just walk around the building. If they have a late practice, they either need to go home and come back, or they need to go to sports study hall. We run sports study hall at the high school until 3:30. So if practice is after 3:30, kids, you got to go home and come back. Middle school, same thing. Their practices are all right from 3 to 5 typically, so they should never have to go home and come back. If you are absent from school, you cannot attend a practice or a game that day unless you were on a college visit with documentation or you have a doctor's note that you were at an appointment of some sort. Face coverings. I know this continues to be a controversial subject. We are following New York State guidelines and mandates. Outdoors, all of our sports, unfortunately, are indoor in the winter, but outside, you do not need a mask. And indoors, masks must be worn by athletes and spectators at all times. Okay. This athletes, you have to wear a mask at all times. You have to wear it appropriately. Last year, it was as tolerated, and kids would pull them down and not use them. We can't have that happening right now. You have to wear them appropriately. I've told the coaches, if you're not wearing them appropriately, you come out of the game. All the coaches have to wear them. I have to wear them. My proctors have to wear them. They should be worn appropriately. They should all be, basic color display. We're not going to get into political messages on masks and things like that. We have paper masks here. We put up tons of face coverings for kids. And most kids by now, and we are well into the pandemic, have their own. Again, testing. Last year we did testing of winter and spring athletes. We are not going to do that this year. We will only test people who are symptomatic or deemed high risk close contacts with a positive person. So if we had a kid on the basketball team test positive, we may pull them and test them. Binax now antigen tests are the ones that we use, and we ask for consent via Family ID. Again, masks are required for all indoor events, regardless of vaccination status. And again, as I said last year, unlike last year, the as tolerated policy, masks must be worn properly the entire contest. First offense is a warning, the second time they will be pulled. Health and safety we have a full-time athletic trainer. We are very fortunate to have Rebecca DeMario on our staff. She's an office at the school and at the stadium. And she will see students primarily in the afternoons before their practices for treatments of various injuries and such. Again, she's not a replacement to your primary care doctor. If she makes a recommendation to see a doctor, you need to see a doctor. One of the most important things that we're seeing is reporting injuries. A lot of times students won't report an injury and it'll linger and it won't get better. And then they'll say, hey, Becca, I sprained my ankle like a week ago. And, she could have been doing treatment with these kids and documenting it and getting them back on the field. Instead, they've continued to play on it and not heal. So we need to know these things. Tell your athlete to report them if they suffer any injury. Concussions, when in doubt, leave them out. I can say a lot about concussions right now, and I know we've all heard the recent story of what happened in Carthage. We will always err on the side of caution because no game is more important than a student's life with second impact syndrome if they get hit again when they've had a concussion. So we will always err on the side of caution. If Becca refers them for a concussion, they have to have clearance from a doctor, and then they still have to go through the return to play protocol even after they are cleared to return. Same thing goes for a COVID infection. If someone has had COVID, they have to go through a return to play protocol, and it starts with their doctor writing a medical release for them to participate in sports. And Becca's contact information is on there as well. I just want to highlight a couple important policies from our code of conduct. Quitting is a policy that we have. If a student or athlete participates in 15 or more practice or games and then decides to quit, they are ineligible for 50% of the next season's contests for that academic year. Okay, and the key word there is that academic year. The rule also applies is if a coach or an administrator kicks a student off a team. Other code of conduct, bullying. A JE student who, after our investigation, is determined to engage in any form of bullying will be subject to discipline measures as set forth by the code of conduct, which can include suspension from practice, games, or contests, suspension from school, dismissal from team, or dismissal from our athletic programs. Substance abuse. No student, as outlined in the district's code of conduct, may possess, sell, purchase, or distribute products, tobacco products, electronic cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, alcohol, and other substances. Refers to inhalants, marijuana, cocaine, LSD, PCP, methamphetamine, and so on and so forth. Inappropriate use of prescription or over-the-counter drugs is also prohibited. If they are in possession of these, if they're seen using these, and we have proof of that, they can be suspended from sports. Students will be searched with a reasonable suspicion. We have vape detectors in our bathrooms. They go off. We will search whoever is in the bathroom. If we get reports that kids have other things on them that they're not supposed to have, we will search them. We will contact you, even if we find nothing, to let you know that we did conduct a search. One of the things, I want to bring up a point about over-the-counter drugs. By New York State ed law, kids cannot carry over-the-counter drugs and their backpacks, their pockets, and sometimes we do find these, and they are subject to discipline with those. I know it seems silly. We don't want to suspend a kid for carrying Tylenol, but by rule, they are not allowed to carry Tylenol in school. It has to be with the nurse, with a doctor's note on file. And again, that is a New York State education law. Other major violations that could result in discipline: fighting, major disruptions in the building, using abusive or inappropriate language. So if we have code of conduct violations and they rise to be something that we talked about, the first offense is a 7 calendar day suspension from athletics. They will need to meet with an alcohol and drug counselor if it involved alcohol or drugs. And they will need to have a re-entry meeting before they go back into the athletics program. Second offense, you're done for the season. Again, if it had anything to do with drugs or alcohol, you have to meet with a counselor. And the third offense is a permanent suspension from our athletic and extracurricular activities. And please note, these are all during your enrollment as a JE student. So again, this starts ticking in 7th grade when you become involved in our extracurriculars. Very rarely do we get to strike 3, but we have, and we hate to do that. So we hold our student athletes to a pretty high standard here at Jordan Elbridge. I'm going to spend a minute on this slide here. Sportsmanship is an expectation for all. We have had so many issues so far this year with spectator and player behavior. And as you see at the bottom, we are going to have 0 tolerance for this behavior. This is the warning right now. There are no more warnings. We have had issues with poor language of players and spectators, fans taunting players, taunting each other, the confronting and harassing of officials if you don't agree with their calls, players questioning coaches and administrators. Okay, we expect students and spectators to conduct themselves in a positive manner regardless of the situation. Failure to do this will result in disciplinary action and possible banishment from the campus. Again, we are having 0 tolerance for this fall. The cheering needs to be positive. We cannot be calling out opposing players by name and number with an intent to harass them. That is a section rule. Okay. We want you to be loud, we want you to be proud, and we want you to be positive. Speaking of spectators, change from years past indoor sports. There are no current limitations on spectators. That's pending things continue to go well. We will still stream at the high school stadium and high school gym, all events via YouTube. Okay, as I've said, face coverings are not required outdoors. They are required indoors in restrooms, any indoor facility. The doors will not be unlocked and the gates will not be open till 30 minutes prior to the start of the contest. Should avoid congregation, should exit the facility promptly after the game is over. You don't want to be mingling and hanging around and having more time in a high-risk exposure inside the building. And again, you should do your best to remain distanced for your own protection from other parties. Different levels of sports that we offer here at Jordan Elbridge Modified. Again, is for our 7th, 8th, and sometimes 9th graders. Every player should be playing in every game, unless, of course, there's an issue with discipline or sportsmanship. And the coaches will be working with the varsity coach to align and have the same goals. Junior varsity programs, JV, winning becomes somewhat of a consideration. Again, our coaches will work with the varsity coach to achieve the goals. And every student should get into every game, not just the last minute of the game. And again, this is not possible for all sports, depending on substitution rules. Varsity, high school level, 9 through 12. Winning is more of consideration, and that is your best team forward. Playing time is never a guarantee. And you notice I said 9 through 12. There could be 9th graders that are asked to play on varsity. If they're deemed one of the best players on the team by the coach and they earn more playing time than, say, a senior, that is the way it rolls at the varsity level. Okay? It's their best foot forward. Playing time is never a guarantee. There are some kids that unfortunately will not get a lot of playing time. But remember, the lessons that we learn from sports and being on a team are far more than minutes logged. We learn a lot about responsibility, teamwork, and respect. So I can say that the reason I've gotten to where I am in my career is not because of my book smarts, but because of the lessons I learned from being a student athlete. And I hope that our kids will get the same that I got from it. Academic eligibility. If a student is failing 2 or more classes, they are on academic probation. They will have to do what we call a runaround sheet, and they will have to report these to the athletic director on a weekly basis. I will be in touch with you via email or phone if a student becomes academically ineligible and what they will need to do to remain eligible. The good thing about our policy is it does allow kids, even if they're failing, to continue participating as long as they are putting in effort. We are not trying to hold kids out that are trying their hardest and still not passing Algebra 2 or geometry or English. Okay, if the kids are working towards trying and trying to pass, right, we're going to work with them and make sure that they continue to be eligible. Okay. All students also need to be on time to school to be eligible. Now, again, the policy says must be in school by 8 a.m. If they're not here by 8 a.m., technically they can't practice, they can't play that day. We typically like to be a little bit lenient. Things happen. So I will usually say, hey, you need to be here on time. If it continues, I will pull this on them and have them miss practice or the contest, and I don't want to do that. Coaches also get sent daily attendance, so they know who is absent and if anyone got to school late, and they will address it as well. Transportation. We will be providing busing to all contests. However, we do encourage parents, if they want, to transport their student athletes to minimize contact time. We do allow you to transport to and from. The athletes are not allowed to drive themselves, not without administrative approval. And again, that's very rare circumstances. If you wish to transport your athlete, you'll need to fill out a transportation form with all of the people that are allowed to transport them. It should be someone over the age of 18 that is a responsible adult, but you can put their names on it, and I'll show you that form in just a minute. It is possible varsity and JV teams may not travel together. Again, if we can, we'll minimize contact time, but this could go for the 7th and 8th grade teams. Depends on how many kids we have. We just can't go over that threshold, and right now it's at about 30 kids, but we'll do what we can to get them all on one bus, but it's not always going to happen. You'll see the underlined masks on buses are required at all times. Every year I get video footage sent to me of kids not wearing masks on the bus. And the bus drivers, they're there to drive, not enforce the mask rules. The coaches should be enforcing the mask rules. And when I get sent video of masks, again, there is no warning. This is your warning. You have to have a mask on the bus. This is not anything new. Okay, so the conversation is going to be pretty short with me. You're off the bus. Okay, and they will have to figure it out. Transportation is not required. It is a privilege. Okay. No food or drink should be being consumed on the bus. Obviously, that would involve your mask being down. Obviously, if you have to take a quick drink of water, take a quick drink of water. But we've had kids that are saying they're eating and then they keep their mask down for extended periods of time. It's not going to fly. When we're traveling, we need to arrive prepared to play. It is likely that we won't be given locker rooms or facilities unless their sport requires a ton of equipment to get dressed. But we want kids to arrive ready to go. This is the transportation form I talked to you about, authorization for parent transportation. Put your name, student's name, high school, middle school, and then the people that are allowed to drive them and the relationship. You sign this and you return it to the coach. That way they know who can take your kid to and from contests and or practice. We have a lot of new uniforms. Our Under Armour uniforms are brand new. For the most part within the last couple of years. Please, please, please do not dry them. Do not use fabric softener. They're sublimated. The logos are dyed right into the fabric, and it will cause them to fade and the fabric to tether. So please hang dry those, wash them in cold water. Failure to return uniforms will result in a bill of the full said price of the uniform. These Under Armour uniforms are not cheap. Please return them. If you don't return them, you don't pay the bill. Okay, we keep track of this stuff, and if you have negative debt to the district when you are a senior, you will not be participating in graduation activities. We've never had to have that happen. I don't think we will have to. That concludes my presentation. Again, my contact information is up here. If you have any questions on anything you heard during this presentation, please reach out to me. Again, your coaches should be following up with a parent meeting here within the first couple weeks of the season. I wish everybody a safe, happy, and healthy sports season, and I look forward to seeing you at the playing venues here at Jordan Elbridge.